My name is Husni Roukbi. I work for a software company that develop ERP solution for the higher education market. It's called Elysium. And I want to talk about, of course, we have to pause for a minute for our sponsors. What I want to talk about is really how to expedite implementing ERP using lean and agile methods. But just let me ask a few questions. How many of you have implemented ERP in the audience here today? Anybody? Sorry? Oh, okay. And you're doing it in a waterfall fashion, I'm assuming, not in an agile fashion. So is it agile? They're doing it in an agile way? Oh, okay, interesting. What are you doing with it? The scrumming and stuff? Okay. Okay. Interesting. All right. So this is a traditional timeline for implementing ERP. Typically takes about 18 months. Yeah, if you follow the waterfall model. I mean, from requirement gathering to solution design, configuration, test, and deploy. It takes about 18 months. But I mean, with the advancement in cloud offering and cloud software and with Agile, I mean, it doesn't make sense anymore for a customer to wait 18 months before they can figure out if this is the right solution for them or not. So really, I mean, the whole purpose is how do we approach the whole ERP implementation such that we can deliver value faster to the end user, yeah? And it's faster approach, it's cheaper, it reduces risk by doing this iterative approach, and then it also accommodates whatever deployment option you want to take, whether it's being SaaS or hosted or on-prem. So that's really the goal in here, yeah? And what are the benefits you're going to achieve out of that? If you implement faster, obviously there is a cost saving to it. If it takes you 6 months to implement, it's cheaper than if you hire somebody to implement it in 18 months. And of course, your timeline is faster. And also, a lot of time, you don't need a lot of the additional stuff. So your scope, if you go through the process I'll be describing, it might save you in even customization scope, which you might not need. But you will find out when you go through the process. Yeah? Any questions so far? I mean, feel free to stop me anytime and ask. I mean, this is an interactive session. But I mean, one thing is majorly different between ERP implementation and application development is you're implementing a product. So it's not really, I mean, you're doing coding, but it's probably 20% of the total project is coding, and 80% is about configuration. Yeah. Your business rules are complex. Your business requirements are complex. Your processes. And then also, an additional aspect is the support team you need is quite diverse in skill sets. You need change managers, you need security, system admin, and so forth. So it's a different mindset than just doing Agile for application development. That's what I'm trying to say here. Yeah? And of course, you're going to face challenge in an organization to adopt Agile for ERP implementation. And the number one challenge is you have to identify who's going to be your Agile champion within the organization. Because if you don't have that, it's not going to work. And not everything about ERP implementation really can be implemented in an Agile way. I mean, specifically speaking, you're
at the end of the day, it's an end-to-end solution. So you're integrating with other systems within your organization. And that part,
usually, you can't control it. You can't say, well, I'm going to do integration using Agile, because you don't know what the other systems are doing or how they're implemented. Same issue with the data migration, legacy data. I mean, you're dealing with that, but that is something that you have to deal with, but cannot be done really in an Agile way. You can do it iteratively speaking, but we'll go through it and I'll show you how we can do it. So what are the key ingredients for this rapid approach for ERP? I think the first one is you have to start with best practices. And what I mean best practices is what the vendor is recommending in terms of best practice, because they've done it many times over and over and over. So
these process models, they have pre-configured rules and validation, really expedite the whole implementation if you start with that as a base. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, because a lot of time, 70% of your want to do is out of the box. It should be available for you. So that's the first thing that is really, this whole approach is dependent on, is start with best practice. And then the second thing is to go through this lean concept of value stream mapping. And why do you want to do that? Because a lot of time, and it depends on the scenario, whether you're upgrading your ERP or it's a brand new implementation, a lot of time by going through that exercise, you find out that you have a lot of waste in your processes. So you can eliminate by going through this value stream mapping exercise. Or you can find out that, there are some gaps I need to do. So it gives you an ability to review all your processes, your business rules, and say, here's where I am, here where I need to be, and here's the delta. And that delta will become your solution backlog. This is really what you're going to do within this project. How you're going to implement your ERP, yeah? And then once you build your solution backlog, then the third step will be to start building iteratively, which is in an Agile way, yeah? So if you follow that model, so the first part is really to set up the environment. And in our world, I mean, within my company, we have something called the welcome environment, which is really to enable you access to the software ASAP. Within 24 hours, you'll have access to a cloud version of it. Whether you bought the software to be on-prem or cloud, it doesn't matter, but it gives you the ability to start using the software and be trained on it within 24 hours. So that's the first step. Second step is to start building the baseline based on best practices. And of course, training is part of that equation. Moving on, I think to the analysis phase, and that's where we spend the time on the value stream mapping process. And this will lead to a solution backlog and a release plan. And then you go into the build process, and this is a typical Scrum, sprinting and so forth. You do it repetitively and iteratively till you're done with the whole solution backlog. And then you do the rollout and deploy. Now, the part of the rollout and deploy, not all of it is Agile. I mean, at the end of the day, you can release multiple times, but every time you're going to release, you have to do system integration, you have to do user acceptance testing, and those are done in a serialized fashion. That's a pipeline, just like the traditional ERP implementation. Yeah? So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into the, oops. Yeah. Sorry.
You move to the build phase only after the solution backlog is complete?
Yes.
At least to your best knowledge at that moment?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So the whole idea is when you do the value stream mapping, you're trying to, and I'm going to go into it in more details, you're trying to find the gap between what is best practice out of the box and what do you really need. Yeah? Because when you go through that process, sometimes you think you need more than what you think you need. And then you end up with this gap, which translates into a solution backlog. And then you go into the build and the release planning. Yeah? So what is value stream? Value stream is really a fundamental thinking construct in Lean and started in manufacturing. And what it is, it's a really a visual tool to show you the flow in your processes from beginning to end and identify areas of waste and where you're spending a lot of time and where you can optimize things. And go ahead.
Last slide you said going after the deploy that steps and so there will be some items which you can't fix. Like you said, you are going to build after all this. Can we go back to
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
after all that
Where are you in the build? Yeah.
So there will be some items which you did not make most of
Yeah, I mean, this picture is misleading here. I have another one I will show you where you do multiple cutover and multiple go live. If you allow me just a few more, and I will show you that. But why do you need value stream mapping? I mean, that's a big question for ERP implementation. I think it will reduce a lot of complexity, and a lot of time you think you need to do a lot of customization because this is the way you do business. But when you start looking at it, and it helps you to visually see that you can optimize your processes, you can simplify your business rules, because they're not really best practice and they're not adding any value. So at the end of the day, it gives you an efficient way to identify waste in your processes and eliminate them. But the only way to do that really is to bring all the stakeholders who own these processes into one room just like this and do capture everything documented and look at it. So it requires, what I'm trying to say, it requires some dedicated time from fairly senior guys in your organization to dedicate the time and effort to do it. But it's a one-time thing. Once you do it, you won't regret it because it's really a helpful tool. And a lot of time, customers find out that where they thought they need a lot of mods to the ERP, by going through that exercise, they realize they don't need as many as they thought they need, because it shows them that you can eliminate some of that waste. Yeah?
Is this a read tool or is it a process?
It's a process and it has its own templates. So you can capture everything, and it has metrics and KPIs and so forth. So for every, if you look at your process map, it goes to detailed level, input and output. It measures the timing and so forth, and see where you're stopping and how long it takes you between process steps, and see how you can optimize it. So yeah, it's quite detailed. I mean, but you can dig, you can go as deep as you want with it. Yeah.
It's a step by building the ERP software or it's
No, it's a process. It's part of the consulting practice we do. Yeah. And it typically takes about 3 days. If you take a process group, let's say finance. So you're going to say, I'm going to look at all the processes for finance. So you bring the stakeholders, and it's a 3-day workshop. So you start with the current process, say, okay, let's see how you do this. How do you do AP? How do you do AR, and so forth. And you draw it on a board and you document it. And, and then you start looking for opportunities to improve it and also document the gaps. So not only that, but remember we started with a baseline. So part of that also, what you do, you say, okay, the baseline give me this, but I really need to do this. So that's a gap. So that's where we say, okay, this need to go into the solution backlog. These features we need to build for you because they're not out of the box. Yeah. So it not only help you identify waste, but also the gaps between what the baseline is offering and what you really need to do, which is the future state for your organization. Yeah. At the end, the result of that is you're building the solution backlog, as you see here. And then you, as the end user, you're prioritizing the solution backlog the way you feel it should be prioritized. So, and you continually going through that. Typically, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks. It depends on the size of the ERP you have and how many modules you have in it to complete. I mean, if you look at, these are some of the modules that you usually focus on. Finance is a big one, manufacturing, material management, logistics. Of course, it goes without saying, it goes over the whole business rules and workflows as well. Yeah? Any questions so far? All right. Now you got your solution backlog, you put your release plan, how you're going to release it. Then you go into a typical Scrum build scenario. From a solution backlog, you have your sprint backlog, you start sprinting, you do the retrospective, the daily stand-up, and then the sprint review. And there's no change in that. It's basically, as long as you have items in your solution backlog, you can go through this multiple times till you're done with it. Yeah? Now, where we're different, and back to your question, is your release is on a different cadence. So the big lines here are for your epics. So you're doing, per epic, let's say you're doing 3 sprints. It doesn't mean that you want to release that. It can be running on a different release. Yeah? So the big shipping box over there are the release timeline, whatever your release plan is, because you might want to go live multiple times. And that's where you have to go through the system integration and UAT, and then you do the cutover. And that's why here I'm showing that it is possible. You can do multiple of these, or as many as you need. It depends on how you want to do your release plan. Yeah? So that's really where it's not 100% agile, but it uses some of the agile concepts and the lean concept. And if you're using the cloud version of our product, we heavily use DevOps as well, so it gives you much faster access to the environment than the normal on-prem.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
You said on the 24 hours you have released the cloud version to the customers?
Yeah, we just...
You just say for some training on it, right?
Yes.
Any of these go live, are there any go live sessions with new things added on the cloud version for the client?
No, no. The cloud version, think about it as a read-only version. It's just for them to kick the tires, to get used to the environment, to be trained on it, because you have online content as well. So you immediately have access to an environment. It's like going through tutoring online, but you have access to the environment. But you cannot modify it, you cannot customize it. Yeah. In parallel, we're building the environment for you. Yeah.
So it doesn't have any, let's say, access to the product or any version of the product unless it reaches close to the 4th or 5th sprint session.
No, you have access to it. You can go on and use it, but you cannot customize it. Say, I need to add this rule here or this business process. Yeah. Yeah. Any more questions? All right.
Basically, the application of Agile here is from customization of product, existing product for a new customer.
Oh, or either a new customer or an existing customer. Actually, the existing customer is faster to implement because you don't have to do a lot in terms of, like, for example, you don't have to do system integration. You're doing UAT, so you can skip some of the stuff. Yeah.
Did you use Agile to actually build the base of the product?
Yeah. Yes. The product is built in an agile way, but on the services side, on the implementation side, this is traditionally has been, we've been doing this in a waterfall fashion, and just lately when we start moving to cloud, we start seeing that, wait a minute, I can deliver the project in 6 months. Why do I need to deliver it in 18 months? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it depends on the complexity. I mean, we have cases where we brought down the implementation timeline from 18 months to 6 months. 6 to 9 months now is typical instead of 18 months.
My questions come from my experience because I used to be in a company working on ERP product as well, and we started developing a new ERP system
Right.
In an agile way, and what we highlighted developers is that we need a complete backlog, at least as complete as possible, to actually start the implementation, because we just don't know anything about the domain. We don't know anything about manufacturing, warehousing, we don't know anything about invoicing.
Right.
So for us it's, okay, you want to apply 23 VAT tax, no problem. Times 0, 23, right? And you have VAT tax apart. Oh wait, but we have 8% VAT tax in some cases. Now you tell me, right?
Right.
That's why I ask if you have the complete backlog here. Because the thing that I see is that when Agile arrived, suddenly everyone wanted to be Agile. Yeah, let's do Scrum or whatever Agile framework we come up with, and we forget completely about waterfall. And in the keynote